Hello and welcome to the RedLaughRiot podcast. My name's Matt.
And I'm Ben.
So yeah, this is episode 8, I believe. Episode 8, right?
I think I lost count.
Of season 2? I'm pretty sure. Let's go with that. So Ben, do you have our first segment ready and raring to go?
I do indeed.
You do indeed? Alright, what's our first segment?
This is called reading the headlines, where we read some headlines. More than 41,000 people will run the London Marathon on Sunday. When they reach mile 23, they'll be handed edible pods made of seaweed extracts instead of a plastic water bottle. Bit of a long headline, but there's your headline. I just read it on Reddit. And now we talk about it.
That's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, environmentally friendly. I've heard about, like, that being a thing, Like...
Yeah, I've
like
seen it being like experimented with,
when they
but
were
like being
developing
used
it
on like a mass level right now is like that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. Here's my thing that sort of makes me go, right? Is like, okay, so it's a marathon, right?
Yeah.
I don't think I could ever run a marathon or let alone like a half marathon, because like a marathon's like 32 Ks, right?
I think it's 40 something.
40 something Ks.
It's 42.
All right, even more of a reason to not run a marathon.
Yep.
In that case, like, would you ever run a marathon, Ben, or not?
No.
Because I don't think I would
I
either. Because I'm pretty sure like the term marathon came from like some story of this guy. Like apparently like there's like a legend associated with it, right?
Well, I think it's a true story.
Or maybe it was a true story. Who knows?
The guy who had to run to a place.
Yeah. Didn't he run from like
marathon.
two like
two cities?
Two cities.
Yeah.
Because like there was like news of like they won like some war back in like a shit ton long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then
that's what they call it officially.
Yeah. That's what the scientists call it. You know, it's like the near past, the past, the furthest past, and then a shit ton long time ago.
Yeah.
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 That's like the scales, eh?
Exactly.
It just slowly builds up.
Next headline today: PepsiCo sues 4 Indian farmers for $150,000 each for infringing its rights by growing the potato variety used in its Lay's chips.
Fuck off, Pepsi.
So Pepsi owns Lay's chips, and it's like copyright striking a YouTube video. It's like that, but like in real life with a farmer who made the same potatoes that you use.
Yeah, nah.
How is it even?
No, Pepsi. Really? You're a multi-million-dollar company, all right? Like, no.
It just doesn't make sense. Like, why would you bother? There's no legal grounds for something like that. I
mean, also there goes any chance we have of being sponsored by Pepsi ever by me saying fuck off Pepsi. Wasn't there like, I can't remember who did it, but some company did like an ad, and it was like an attack ad pretty much, and it was talking about like how bad another company was, and it was like just calling them out, and that was the entire ad. I can't remember any more information.
There are some ads that, wait, are you talking about recently? Is that the Spotify thing?
Maybe.
That was such a dumb video. So you have seen the Spotify thing?
I think so.
It was basically Spotify saying, "Hey Apple, we don't like that you charge 30% on Spotify's." So basically, if you have an iPhone and you get Spotify on your phone, and then you subscribe to Spotify through your iPhone, Apple takes 30% cut of that.
Okay.
For the first year, and then every year after that, it's only 15%.
Right.
Which is not something they say. But anyway, Spotify's like, you guys suck because you take extra money and it makes it harder for us. And then Apple's, they did respond, I can't remember what they said, but my response is just like, Apple runs the entire app store for every app developer, not just you. And they maintain it, and it's like the cleanest app store out there compared to like Google Play or anything. You don't get heaps and heaps of like viruses and like scam apps and stuff, because they manually approve every single app.
Yeah.
Some get through cracks, like some are real smart the way they do it, but for the most part, it's a really tight system, and it's a free platform for everyone to use. And you're complaining about it, like it's just no.
Yeah.
Like shut up, like. It's just stupid. And they're trying to, what everyone does when they're trying to attack Apple, they try and capitalize on people's ignorance, or people don't know a lot about a lot of things Apple does, and so it comes off as painting Apple in a really bad light, where if you really think about it, it's really not.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with what they're doing. Yeah. What we're talking about potato chips.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the video you were talking about, I think.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of other ads out there that are like subtly, even not subtly, like saying that their competitors worse than the other ones. I kind of disagree. I disagree with that strategy of marketing. If it's like subtle and it's not Pepsi is bad and Coke is good, then it's like, okay. Actually, like maybe I've talked about it before. The Samsung ads, they're real bad. The ones that basically try and dig into like the Apple ones, and they're just so dumb. And then a year later, they end up contradicting themselves with their new phone that does everything that they said they hated. And it's just like, shut up, Samsung. If you're gonna if you want to create an advertisement, advertise your phone. Don't just try and pick apart the iPhone. Do you know what I mean? Like,
so do you disagree with with that, using that same logic in regards to like political ads? You know how there's like attack ads in that?
I mean, like, there's place for debate in politics, like in an actual debate scenario, but if you're making an advertisement, just tell them what you're doing.
Yeah, rather than just being like, this guy's bad.
Yeah.
Yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, that's what.
Because that's like all over American politics, eh? It was insane when I was in the States. Like,
oh, really?
Like, because, they would come up on like TV and that.
Okay.
And they would just be like, this guy's bad, you know?
That's
and then
so dumb.
And then like, then it'd be like, paid by the Vote for So-and-so organization. And it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. America's weird, which I think we've
covered fairly a few times.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of weird things that happen in America, tangentially related, from Today I Learned that in 1998, Sony had the chance to buy the rights to almost every Marvel character for $25 million. They opted to only buy the rights to Spider-Man for just $7 million, stating, nobody gives a shit about the other Marvel characters. Which at the time was completely true. No one did.
Yeah.
And the reason was because there was no good movies about them until Marvel came out and made Iron Man, and were like, we can make good movies with characters you don't know about. And then Sony did make at least 2 good Spider-Man movies. And then they went ahead and remade them and made them a lot worse than the first time. And then they finally gave up and decided, hey, Marvel, do you want to team up and take Spider-Man back from us? So in the end, it kind of worked out.
So they bought the rights, right?
Mm-hmm.
They made like a trilogy of, was it a trilogy of films?
Yeah.
And then they did another another trilogy.
Nah, they just
remake?
did 2.
Or just 2?
You know, The Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield.
Yeah.
So they did those 2. They obviously wanted to do a 3rd one, and then the second one just didn't make enough money. I mean, those movies are both not great movies, in my opinion. The second one was especially bad.
Out of the 5 films that they made, though, did they make more than the $7 million that they...
Oh, easily.
bought the
Of
rights
course
for?
they made the money back. Of course they made the money back. So, like, I can see, like, financially, and at the time, it was definitely the smarter decision for them. Because there was, like, an extra, 20-something, almost million for all those other characters.
Yeah.
And then when they don't necessarily have the time and resources to pay that back straight away, like, because they earned it all back in the first Spider-Man movie.
Yeah.
Which made so much more. Like, $7 million is so cheap.
Yeah.
For IP.
Yeah.
Like, Marvel was struggling. They needed money. So they just, like, take it. At the time, anyway. So, yeah, I mean, technically, you could say Sony saved Marvel by making that purchase, which then led to what we have now.
Because, I've heard other stories of, like, I'm pretty sure apparently DC was going to buy Marvel, like, back in the comics days.
Yeah.
So I remember that being a story.
Sure.
Yeah, like, Marvel offered DC, like, money to buy them out.
Right.
Or whatever, for X amount. And then DC was like, nah, screw off.
Which is kind of good, because you don't want to just absolve all competition.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want a monopoly. Yeah, for sure.
But nowadays, that's happening.
Yep.
or something close to it. I mean, it's not that bad, but it's not great.
Yeah, it's like,
Anyway.
Yeah.
Speaking of
not great things,
I was going to say, speaking of Spider-Man remakes, which I very clearly handed to you, and then we trailed off. But there we go.
Yeah. So speaking of, hey, you know what? You know what's a little bit of a redo? Remade films. So speaking of that,
no way,
we're making.
How did you come up with that segue,
list,
Matt?
Yeah, our list is that we're talking about today's top 5 movies we want to see remade. Really wish I could redo that segue, but all good. All right. So
Tash will edit it and make it just sound
we'll make it
perfect.
way better. Yeah,
way better.
So remakes, right? Here's the thing that I was thinking about while I was making this list, right? First thing was I don't really like remakes that much, right?
Mm-hmm.
Second thing was like, okay, why remake a film, right? Was sort of like the other question, right? And the categories I came up with was basically like, okay, what film would I like to see like recast with like modern actors?
Right.
What film could be modernized, like an older film, and then sort of modernize it to modern day? And the third category was what was a good concept, but just wasn't a good film and sort of deserves another crack. Right? Like had a good premise, but didn't really capitalize.
Yeah.
Right. So those were my three categories, and I tried to vary it in genre-wise, but that didn't really end up happening. That's okay. So my number 5 pick is The Shining. Fun fact with The Shining. Okay, so The Shining's a good film. It's a really good film. Have you seen it?
No.
No? Okay. Yeah, so The Shining's a good film. It's definitely a good horror film and just a good film as well in general. The interesting thing about The Shining, though, is The Shining didn't actually scare me. You know what I mean? Because there wasn't much like jump scares. And the thing with horror films is that's the only thing about horror films that actually scare me is the jump scares. You know what I mean?
It's
like,
kind of interesting because I know a lot of people criticize jump scares for being too easy and
I'm the
scary.
easiest person to get with a jump scare. Like,
yeah.
I can know a jump scare's happening, which I've mentioned before.
Yeah.
On this podcast, I can know a jump scare's coming, and I will still get scared when that jump scare. I think it's just because I'm naturally like a very anxious person. So maybe that.
I think
maybe that plays into it.
If that's what you think a movie needs, then
I don't think it needs it, but I think that's the one thing that makes me scared in a horror film.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, it's not really like the idea of it that scares. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Really.
I'm not explaining it very well, but all good.
Like, what about just like tension in general? Like building tension in a kind of horrific way.
Yeah.
You know, like not necessarily scary, but frightening is probably a better word.
Yeah. I mean, I think when it's like tension, I'm not as like...
You're like on the edge of your seat, like not knowing what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, you don't feel that?
Not really. I don't know.
You only feel it with jump scares.
Yeah.
That's really strange.
Yeah. I don't know. It's
like the opposite of what most people feel. Most people are just like, ugh, jump scare.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm like...
that's
I'm
odd.
switched around, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like, it's only the jump scare that like gets me, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So, The Shining, I think, would be really interesting to see remade. Also, additionally, because Stephen King famously doesn't actually like The Shining. He said he hates it.
Oh, okay.
Because it's based off one of his thousands of books he's written. So it'd be interesting to see, like, if like they made, I don't know, if they made a Shining that was more towards King's vision, you know?
Right.
I know. I think that would be interesting. I'm not saying necessarily it would be good.
Yep.
But I'm saying it would be interesting. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's my number 5 pick, The Shining.
My list is really loose. It's kind of just like things that I could think of. Because to be honest, apart from maybe two and a half of these, I'm like not like super passionate about like getting these remade, you know. Because like I kind of agree in general that most movies don't need to be remade.
Yeah.
And most of the remakes that we have seen have been pointless and terrible.
Yeah, for sure.
But the first one on my list is Indiana Jones, and this is less of like I want it remade because I dislike the old ones, and more because I think that it's a franchise that we deserve to have continued on. So maybe it's kind of like that kind of half reboot, half sequel, or it can be a totally new story. You know what I mean? Like a new version of Indiana Jones.
For sure.
I think it's just like a genre in general that we don't see a lot of.
Yeah.
Like Sherlock Holmes and Jumanji are the films that I can think of that we had modern recently, and Sherlock Holmes hasn't had a new movie in ages, not for another couple of years before we see the third one as well. Like that kind of weird, that kind of like adventure kind of film in that genre that I don't even know how to properly describe the genre. AJ from Cult Popture was recently talking about this, and it got me thinking about it, and that's what made me think Indiana Jones. I know we had a crappy one 10 years ago, whenever that was.
Yeah.
Obviously, like, I don't want another one with Harrison Ford. He doesn't want to do another one, obviously. No one wants that. If it was Chris Pratt or someone like, you know, up and coming would be cool just to see that genre and that franchise revitalized, because I know a lot of people would flock to that.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
as long as you're not rehashing the old ones, but you're taking inspiration and telling a new story. That could be cool.
All right, so my number 4 pick. So yeah, I was mentioning the recast. So my next 2 picks are this category of wanting to see what it would look like recasted. The Usual Suspects is my number 4 pick.
Also haven't seen this.
Really good film, has a really good twist at the end, so I won't say too much about it. Just a really interesting and clever film, and I think it'd be interesting to see like the characters in the hands of some other actors, like modern actors.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea who I would cast, but yeah, I think it'd be a really interesting film. So yeah, that's my number 4 pick, The Usual Suspects.
Cool. My number 4 is The Time Machine. The one with Guy Pearce, based on a novel by H.G. Wells. I watched this movie when it was on TV one time, just randomly tuned in, and I watched it, and actually really enjoyed most of it. I thought the themes and the story were really great, and I love Guy Pearce in it. In fact, that's the only thing with some of these movies is like you almost wouldn't want to remake them because the casting was already so good earlier, you know?
Exactly.
But I think it really suffered from being made in the early 2000s where visual effects were real bad. And there's just like a few like story beats towards the end that are just like a bit could use some doing over, you know what I mean? And it's like it's because it's not a story that I think a lot of people are familiar with, it could do well as a brand new film. Just a story that I thought was cool, that I really enjoyed, but didn't make the perfect movie, you know? Yeah.
Yep, so my next pick is 12 Angry Men.
3 for 3, haven't seen.
Oh, wow. Like a real classic, like one of those old classics. I think it's from like, I want to say the 60s, maybe the 70s. It's one of those films which are really interesting because it's sort of dialogue driven on the fact that it's like 12 people, like, you know.
Are they angry?
Yeah.
Are they all men?
Yes.
That's sexist.
Yeah.
I disagree. You should remake it and cast them all as female.
Yeah, a potential option. Yeah, so it's basically about like these 12 guys who are part of a jury, and they're, you know, and they have to decide whether this guy's guilty of murder or not.
Mm.
Yeah, and literally the entire film is just them like arguing, which is really interesting. It's based off a play. I think it was originally a play, and a really famous play as well, by the same name, I believe. Yeah, I know, it's interesting because it's just because again, I think it'd be interesting to sort of recast it. Like you could I think you could easily like cast like some of like the like A-list Hollywood people, you know. It could very easily be like if it was remade, I think it would be very easily remade as like a, you know, like Hollywood elite cast, kind of like Ocean's 11, you know. Remade Ocean's 11, but 12 Angry Men is a good film like by itself as the original. Yeah, so again, I think that's always the fear with remakes is if you make a bad remake, does it tarnish the original or not?
Yeah, I guess most of the time it kind of does. Like, it doesn't ruin the original, but it just ruins the idea of it.
Yeah.
The fact that it never, like, if there is a bad version, it just never needed to exist. You know what I mean? Which you might say about my next pick, which is Psycho, which I know people would be like up in arms, like, you can't remake one of the best movies ever made. And, well, it's just not one of the best movies ever made. There you go. But it is... It's got some really good stuff in it, but overall, in today, like right now, today, watching that is not like a primo, great, fantastic movie. It's good, but it's not primo, great, fantastic, and it could be. I have mentioned this a few weeks ago after I watched it, and I just think what you actually could do, you'd have to be smart about it. You don't market it as being a Psycho remake. You don't even, so that the audience doesn't even realize it's a Psycho remake. Pretty much up until the like shower scene, then they're like, wait, hold on, and then as soon as that cuts to the outside of the motel, and it zooms out and you see the sign Boats Motel, and that's the first time you realize, oh, this is Psycho. Because up until that point you can have similar story beats, but obviously can't be like exactly identical, otherwise it would be too obvious, you know.
Right.
And I think they're just the tools we have in filmmaking and sound design and everything. I reckon we can build that tension even more. We can obviously have a great cast. I mean, it's kind of hard because like it would be hard to market the movie, I guess, because if you're not trying to market it as Psycho, so I don't know what exactly you do. I think it's just a cool idea. Yeah. Maybe it's just one of my cool ideas that just realistically wouldn't be any good. But I mean, I just think it would be cool, and I just really want to see more behind the character of the murderer, because I feel like we don't get enough of that, if not beforehand, then in the aftermath, because at the end of it, like I mentioned, it's kind of all just explained in exposition, and I really didn't like that about it. And they just obviously couldn't do that again. And that would really help it for me. Yeah, I just think it'd be cool. Just seeing that done again, a modern take of it, I guess.
Yeah,
I think it'd be cool.
I think they did remake Psycho.
Really?
Yeah, I think there was a remake in the 80s or something like that.
Oh, okay.
But I think it was more of a shot-for-shot remake as
Really?
opposed to, taking any liberties.
Right. Yeah. I should do more research.
Yeah, so my number 2 pick. So yeah, you were mentioning, Ben, before that you were 0 for 3 in terms of seeing films on my list.
Yep.
Funnily enough, I haven't seen this film I'm about to mention.
Damn.
And that's In Time.
And I have seen this film.
And you have seen it. So I think In Time, like what I've heard about it. So okay, I do need to see it. All right. So
You don't.
I don't.
Nah.
Okay, well that's.
I think actually, then again, you might like it.
That's half.
It's not terrible. It's just like
That's half the reason why it's on my list, right? Because I feel like it had a really cool concept. Like I've heard about the concept, right? Like
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
I agree.
Like time's a currency.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like what could go wrong with that sort of society? I reckon that was a really good concept. And what I've heard about the film is that it just like for that concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
The film itself was just like.
Didn't live up to that.
Yeah, it didn't live up to the concept, and it'd be really interesting to see.
Yeah,
maybe some other filmmakers.
I'd love to see
crack.
someone like Joseph Kosinski. He did Tron Legacy and Oblivion.
Yeah,
which I think are two other really great dystopians that I think he would do awesomely.
Yeah.
But obviously, if he doesn't want to revisit that kind of genre again, there are plenty of other filmmakers that could, I agree, do a really good job.
Tron Legacy was pretty much a remake as well, because wasn't the original Tron like?
Oh yeah,
old?
well it was a reboot. Yeah,
yeah, a reboot.
It was a reboot / it was technically a sequel, but it's kind of like a revitalization.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it wasn't a remake. But then Oblivion was based on a comic book, I think. So
yeah, your number 2.
And speaking of comic books,
yeah,
damn, I should have seen that segue and taken it earlier. My next film that is inevitably going to be remade is The Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
And to be honest, actually, I think The Rise of the Silver Surfer was the first ever comic book movie I saw. Funnily enough, I was like, because my family was like, hey, you want to go see the second Fantastic Four movie? I was like, but I haven't seen the first one, because I'm pretty sure my parents at the time wouldn't let me see Fantastic Four. I was pretty young, so I don't know. And there's some kind of dark scenes in that first movie anyway, if I'm remembering correctly. Anyway, we ended up going to the theater to see the second one. And so I saw that, and then I'm pretty sure I still wasn't allowed to see the first one. I can't remember the details. Point is, I enjoyed them at the time, and I haven't seen them since I was young, so I probably don't really remember that well, but I know everyone else seems to think they're terrible. And I definitely didn't need to see the Fan 4 stick, which I didn't see. No one... I think ever said that was any good. So yeah, and the good thing about Fantastic Four compared to X-Men is that it's already out of the public consciousness, and we don't need to wait that long. But I do believe Kevin Feige said that they already have a plan for the next 5 years that doesn't involve X-Men or Fantastic Four, which I'm actually kind of happy about. I reckon we definitely need to wait for X-Men. Fantastic Four, if that happened in the next 2 or 3 years, I'd be pretty stoked. But obviously, I don't think it will. Maybe they'll start laying some groundwork, but then we wouldn't get an actual Fantastic Four movie till 2028, maybe.
Yep.
Oh, wait, no, that's more than 5 years. I don't know. I'm bad at math, but who cares? Maybe that's when X-Men would happen, and then we could have Fantastic Four movie 3 years before that. Yeah, that'd be cool. I'm just losing my train of thought, as I always do on these late-night podcasts.
Yeah. Do you have honorable mentions?
I have a few.
Because
I managed to find a few.
Yeah, so two have popped in my head for me, so I'm just going to say them then. One's Cool Hand Luke, which is this old film from, I want to say the 50s or the 60s.
Yeah.
It's actually a really good film. It's about this guy who gets arrested and sent to prison for I can't even remember if he did the crime or not. Oh no, I think he did. Yeah, he got drunk and he vandalized a fire hydrant or something.
Yeah.
Or some parking meters or something. So real badass, right? And he gets sent to prison, and then he sort of he escapes from prison twice. So there's 2 prison escapes. And then and then a bunch of other stuff happens.
Sounds a little bit like a Tintin comic.
Yeah, so I don't want to spoil it
Which
too
I
much.
also want to see, not remade, but I need that sequel. Come on, guys.
Yeah, so really, it is an interesting film. And it'd be sort of interesting to see like that sort of revitalized and some new
Breath of fresh air.
breath of fresh air,
And not just
also,
a rehash, yeah.
yeah, and not just a rehash, and also, I think the thing that comes like a good thing about doing that sort of type of thing is that it exposes those ideas and that film and that storyline and those characters and yada 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 to a new audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is really cool. My other one is kind of cop out, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Romeo and Juliet. I want it remade, right?
With DiCaprio again?
No. And I want it to be gay. I want it to be two dudes.
What's the other guy's name then?
Julio.
Is that a name?
Sure.
Come on, you can come up with something better than that.
Romeo and Jude.
Yeah?
Yeah?
Yeah, that works.
All right, Romeo and Jude. The gay Romeo and Juliet story. I want it redone. I want it to happen. I reckon it'd be dope. Yeah, I'm a sucker for a good.
Have you, by any chance, read the original play?
I have, yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you like that?
Yeah.
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 Good. Yeah. Only Shakespeare I've read is Macbeth.
Yeah, I've read a fair amount, and then also performed a fair amount as well.
So you would base it still on the play. Would you? How much changes would you have to make?
I'm not sure, because if you were changing, you'd have to change some of it. I think, like switch pronouns out and that. I'd imagine.
Well, duh.
But I don't think I'd change too much. I think I would like to keep it in the Shakespearean language and not.
Oh yeah.
Not leave it.
Kind of like the Macbeth movie.
Yeah.
The recent one. Yeah. Okay.
Because the Romeo and Juliet one with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Is that in the Shakespearean language?
Yeah, it's Shakespearean English, but it is modernized. It's in a modernized setting, but it's Shakespearean English, which I reckon is pretty cool. I just wouldn't have the whole Baz Luhrmann style. I don't know if you've seen many Baz Luhrmann films, but very bright.
I don't know who that is.
It's like overly bright, and I'm just like, bro, just dull it back a bit, my dude. Yeah, I don't know. I reckon a gay Romeo and Juliet film. I want to see it. Let's do it.
Man, you talked for longer about those two than I think in total you talk about any of the other ones.
Probably. Should have made that like my number one. Maybe.
Yeah, you sounded real passionate about that one.
Yeah.
Some little honorable mentions for me. Thunderbirds. Have you seen that 2003 movie? I think.
Yeah.
Now, I was always a fan of the puppet show as a kid. Puppet show makes it sound really dumb. It's not like a puppet. It's just a show where they use puppets on strings.
Mm-hmm.
I was always a fan of that as a kid, and then I loved the old movie, 2000-something movie. As a kid, I haven't seen it in a long time. It probably doesn't hold up that well. But I feel like those movies don't happen. Like, Sky High, that kind of fun kids movie with not necessarily superheroes, but those kind of hero roles. Does that happen in kids movies anymore? I guess I don't follow kids genres, but it seems like it's all just animated stuff, and it's terrible, dumb concepts about animals and plants coming to life. I mean, I don't know. I just I miss those movies. Maybe this is part of my childhood that I want back. I know they did a Thunderbirds TV show recently here in New Zealand, which actually I enjoyed. I think I watched some of the first season of that, which is actually quite good. But I think a movie could be cool as well, live action without puppets. What would be cool? Why not do it again? And I feel like that's not really been brought up, and it's something I'm sure people would see if it was good. That's the thing about obviously all of these. It's really about getting talent that's passionate about it and that wants to do it well. And next on the list, Howl's Moving Castle, which I don't remember most of. But I remember seeing Mortal Engines and thinking, imagine if Howl's Moving Castle was in live action, because it kind of visually is a similar vibe, I think, in terms of the big city / castle kind of thing, the steampunk kind of thing, which that could look so cool in live action. And I know everyone who loves anime is going to be like, what, you can remake it? Anyway, as they do. It could happen. I could see that happening in live. But you'd still get Japanese filmmakers doing it, probably because they'd be the most passionate about the story and they know it more best. Because if you just Americanize it, that would just be incredibly pointless and lame.
Right.
Speaking of Mortal Engines, that kind of needs to be... I don't want to say remade. I don't think it needs to be remade. I think they just need a shot at a sequel and actually write it really not bad. Because that had so much potential. And like you were saying before, a lot of remakes is just like it had potential, and it was a cool concept. I love the concept of that movie. A lot of people seem to think it's weird and wacky. I actually think that kind of wackiness makes it cool.
Right.
But then if you don't have a script that makes any sense, then of course it's going to be wacky. If they had a sequel that was quite good, then I'd be real keen, but I just don't imagine anyone's going to give them money to do that, which sucks. And then The Last Airbender, this one at the moment is not going to get a movie remake because it's getting a live action show on Netflix, which I'm actually quite excited for because the creators are behind it and everything. This is a movie that I thought, like, if I ever got to the stage where I could make movies, this is something I would want to do because I love that show. I would be passionate about it, and I would make sure it's accurate and not just a rush like that Shyamalan movie was. And obviously it wouldn't just be one movie per season. You just couldn't do it. But that's like something I just wanted to put on the list. And then the other one, oh, actually two more. But the other one that's ridiculous, Super Mario Bros. Did you see that movie?
No, I don't think so.
Man, I don't know why I want to see this remade other than the fact that it's such a strange concept that it doesn't matter if it's bad again.
Right.
That, like, I would still see it because it's just such a hilarious thing to try and put into live action. So that's why I would give someone a shot at that if I was handing out the tickets. And then Suicide Squad, which we are getting a remake of, pretty much. I think the new one's basically a reboot remake kind of thing. So I'm excited for that. I just wanted to mention that because I like this concept of the Suicide Squad. I thought they just had an awesome concept and then saw Guardians of the Galaxy and thought, oh no, we got to change it completely, and just ruined it. But if they'd stuck to their guns, I think it would have been a lot better. But they're so reactive, Warner Brothers. They're so reactive. Go away, Siri. Well, I didn't even say "Hey Siri," and it's like it doesn't even acknowledge that I said "Hey Siri." So I don't know why it even popped up. Sorry for igniting everyone's "Hey Siri" if you're listening to this in your car or something. And that's my honorable mentions.
And those are your honorable mentions.
Oh,
All right. So on to my number one. My number one is The Breakfast Club.
No way.
Yeah.
This was like one that I scrolled past and was like, oh yeah, Breakfast Club. But then I was like, wait, no, that movie's perfect. That doesn't need to be changed.
Okay, so here's my issue. Here's my thing with that. I'd be very, very scared of a remake, right? Because I love that movie.
Yeah.
Right? Like the original is dope.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my reasoning. I reckon it'd be dope if they remade it and they sort of modernized it. So like you could bring in like technology and that sort of role in high school.
Yeah.
Maybe modernize it a little bit in terms of talk about race and talk about LGBTQ rights and stuff like that. You know what I mean? I think you could sort of like modernize it a bit to make it relevant today. And that's not to say that it's not completely irrelevant to today. I think there's definitely crossover, but I think a Breakfast Club that would sort of like would sort of serve today's world better would be really interesting and really cool. Yeah, especially for this generation. You know,
Right.
yeah, for like
I
sort of a
guess that's what
modern,
you're saying, eh? Because like
yeah,
most people in our generation wouldn't watch The Breakfast Club because it's old. Like, was it 90s or 80s? 80s movie.
I think it's
whatever.
80s.
Why would I watch that? Yeah, I guess that's true. A lot of movies that are really great don't seem relevant to kids. So that's a good point that you bring up. I don't know how people would feel about it being remade. I feel like you could do a similar thing and just make a new
Yeah.
thing and call it something different.
You could make a spiritual successor, I guess.
Like you'd acknowledge that it's like basically a remake, but it wouldn't be exactly a remake
Yeah.
because then it doesn't have to be like accurate to the original or anything like that. You know, like you can still make it original. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, like I'd be very, very scared of it being remade, but I think it'd be cool to sort of see it modernized and given a new angle. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, my number one is The Incredible Hulk. That's my one, and this is a weird one because I don't strictly, I don't like in the traditional sense of a remake. I don't want like an actual remake in that sense. I kind of want it to be possible to literally replace Edward Norton with Mark Ruffalo in this role.
Right.
Just reshoot Mark Ruffalo's scenes, splice it in there digitally, and because like legitimately there are like many moments in this movie where I think Mark Ruffalo would be so great here, and it's just so sad that they didn't have him cast for this film. And then also definitely rewrite the third act a little bit, make it less corny. I think still Hulk and Abomination fighting is still a good third act. It just is really corny. So they need to change that up a bit and make it less messy and Hulk smash and abomination angry and that kind of was just so annoying. And I hate that. But make it more natural, make it feel more like Hulk is today, because that's the thing. The Hulk in that movie is real inconsistent with the current Hulk, or I should say, like Hulk that we've seen throughout the rest of the Avengers movies. Yeah. So it's a weird one. It's like I don't really want it remade. I just want it to be.
You just want
almost
Mark
like
Ruffalo to be
almost like a remastered, or
yeah.
But like I know it's like such an impossible task. But if it was possible, I would pay for that, like, to happen. If one day I have all the muns, I would spend it on this, which is a stupid thing to spend it on. I know, but I would do it because like a lot of people skip over that movie, which I think is a real shame because there's a lot of great things in that movie. Even Marvel themselves ignore it for the most part, not entirely, because they brought back one of the characters from that film, but they ignore that Betty Ross, his love interest, ever happened, which I don't know how they would do that if they tried to remake it, if they would tone that down or they would change. I don't know. Like, you think they'd at least acknowledge it. There's my movie list thing.
So the thing with remakes, right, that people don't like is, and what you see a lot of the time, is classics, right?
Getting remade, you mean?
Either getting remade or people saying that they shouldn't be remade. Which
Yeah.
always...
Like The Breakfast Club.
Like The Breakfast Club is a good...
Or
good
Psycho.
example. Or Psycho.
Yeah.
Or The Shining. So here's a question, right? How many years has to go by before something... Like, does something... A, what's the definition of a classic? B, how long does it take for something to become a classic? Whether it be a song, an album, a TV show, a movie, or whatever.
Well, is there such thing as a classic TV show? I feel like I've never heard that kind of thrown around.
Yeah.
For the most part, I hear classic movies or classic album. Not even albums. Yeah. Songs usually. It's usually singles that are given classic labels. But I think like it's not even just time. Like there has to be something about that makes it classic. It has to be high quality and there has to be a huge cultural impact about it, I think. Did you like look up the definition or anything like that?
I'm looking it up right now.
Yeah. Because I feel like I've actually come up with a list of movies that I would call classics, or I think will be named classics in the future.
Okay.
And I wonder, I was going to ask what you think about these and if you would call them classics today.
All right. So we'll do a lightning round in a minute. Firstly, I'm just gonna define the word classic. All right. So this is just literally the first definition that comes up. All right.
Yeah.
Judged over a period of time to be of the highest quality and outstanding of its kind.
Right.
So that's the definition.
But there's no period of time stated. So
there's no period of time stated.
So we don't know how long necessarily. But I would kind of
I have a year in mind.
Okay, let's go through this list I came up with. The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, sure. Yep.
You seem hesitant.
I don't know. I think it's just because I'm not a big fan.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But if you think about the
impact.
Yeah.
Then yes.
Okay. The Dark Knight.
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting. WALL-E.
When was WALL-E released?
2008, same year as Dark Knight. I shouldn't have told you that. The idea of this is that I'm not telling you the dates.
Yeah.
You got to think about the movie itself. I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Boy.
The Waititi film?
Yeah. I thought you'd be more certain on this. I just say instantly that's at least a New Zealand classic.
Yeah.
Yeah. It can't not be.
I'm overthinking it. This is my issue.
I think you are. You got to go with your instinct.
All right, I'm lightning
yeah,
rounding.
is this a classic or not? The Social Network.
The Social Network.
You just said you were going to lightning.
I want to say
said,
yes, but probably no.
What do you mean by that?
Okay, I really like it, but I wouldn't regard it as like a classic. I just don't think it has the the impact.
Okay. Les Mis.
No.
And then the other ones, like you probably definitely won't. The Avengers, the first Avengers movie.
No.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
No.
Mad Max Fury Road.
No.
Okay.
I haven't seen it, so.
Oh, okay. So I was listing in order of like earliest to latest.
Yeah.
These are ones that I think, I would say everything up to Boy, I'd say that's a classic. And that's been at least 9 years since all of those movies came out. This is just like a rough thing, like list that I came up with of stuff that I was kind of looking through. What I kind of felt in my gut were classics.
Right.
And then after that point are things that I think
might
either are or will be down the road. I think The Avengers is already, because of the huge cultural movement around it, has become a classic already.
Right.
I feel like it's like already at that stage. but it's kind of maybe not quite old enough. I don't know. 'Cause
Yeah.
like it's kind of like you say, it's kind of how do you know? And then Guardians of the Galaxy similarly because of the formation of that and what that movie was. And then Mad Max being the most recent of these, 2015. I think that's just like it's one of the movies that I think more people will think about later on down the road.
Right.
Because people will think about what were the great movies of the last decade, and people think, you know what, Mad Max was really, really good, and then they'll be like, that's a classic, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like right now it's not in like people don't talk about it, but like when you try and think about the movies from the past 10 years, you will think about this movie. I would expect anyway.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So it's that maybe that's what a classic is. It's like think about the entire past 10, 15 years. What are these movies that stand out as like
Yeah. I mean,
either being really good or having a huge cultural impact, I feel, or both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
guess it needs to be both.
I would
because
I would definitely agree with that definition. It
Yeah.
has to stand out, like, in some regard.
amongst a long period of time.
Yeah, yeah, and I think the time period I would give would be about 10 years. I think
Right.
10 years is my sort of
I was thinking like at least 5 years.
yeah. I would say give it 10 years, and
Yeah.
then it can be determined to be a classic for sure. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Like Demon Things is classic is very interesting to me because, especially the like how do you define greatness, you know, and sort of stuff like that. And I definitely think it's basically does it hold up in X amount of years,
Yeah.
10 years, 20 years.
What I think interesting about this is the only one on this list that you immediately said yes to was The Dark Knight.
Yeah.
Why is that one just so certain for you?
I feel like that film changed the genre, the superhero genre.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because, and correct me,
I would actually argue it changed it for the worse.
do you reckon?
Yeah, because all the movies that have tried to be like The Dark Knight, except
failed.
The Dark Knight, yeah, exactly, have failed.
Yeah.
Because I think The Dark Knight's great. What it did was great, but it didn't do anything for. I guess it made them more realistic and grounded, which I guess Marvel movies have done in a sense, but they've still been quite comic booky and funny and a bit more lighthearted. Whereas you have Man of Steel, which tried to copy The Dark Knight kind of thing, and then following forward with like 4 more movies before they realized, oh, maybe we shouldn't be doing this. You know, I think that's in general a thing with movie studios that have tried to look at the success of one franchise and pick apart, just take one value of that and think that's what made it popular, and just try and blow that up, you know, which is, you know, never the case.
I think though you can look at the interesting thing with like the superhero genre though is you can look at the films from like the 80s,
Oh yeah,
like the super old ones.
yeah, because I would actually argue Spider-Man 1 changed the genre because it's the first like modern take, or was that before? That was before X-Men. Yeah, so that was like the first modern take that that I can think of that is like, you know, you would consider that one of the first comic book movies of the decade. Sorry, not of the decade, of like the current period that we're in.
Yeah.
Because like before that was like real campy, like
100%.
Superman and Batman movies and stuff like that. It's just don't even like hold a candle to like the kind of stuff that's being made today.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't know. It's something about The Dark Knight for me stands out about it.
Yeah. I mean, on its own, it's just a phenomenal film.
Yeah, I would definitely consider it a classic for sure.
And that...
I'm trying to think of things I consider classics.
Right. It has been 10 years since The Dark Knight. So
that are
you
more
can say that.
that are more modern. Like, I'm trying to think of ones that are more modern.
Yeah, so I couldn't think of anything past 2015 that I could call classic. So even for me, it seems to be like it takes time.
A time-related thing for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think.
I guess it's because, like, at the moment, like, there's, you know, so many great movies that I've seen in the last couple years, maybe, but the classics hold out beyond that and beyond the next 5, 10, 50 years. You know, you think about them as a whole. So I guess that's what it is. It's more about the volume of movies and the best of the very best.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for me, The Dark Knight is that of the superhero genre.
Mm-hmm.
I've said before that I think The Dark Knight's the greatest superhero film of all time.
Yeah, you probably did say that. Although you haven't seen them all. So.
What would your pick be?
What I think the best honestly, I wouldn't even call it a superhero movie. I know, like, technically, like, it's a comic book movie, right? But most comic book movies that I love, I wouldn't call superhero movies. At least half the Marvel movies, I wouldn't call them superhero movies.
Right.
Dark Knight, definitely not, because it doesn't feel like that. It's not about a superhero. It's about a person. It's about a human being. It's about a character. It's about their story and their journey. Unlike the Raimi Spider-Man, actually, all the Spider-Man movies, they're definitely superhero movies, because that's about like a superhero and their journey and their secret identity and all that kind of typical superhero stuff. So I'd say that is actually its own genre within comic book movies.
Right.
Yeah, because like half the like Marvel movies are just like basically have their own genre, not really superhero-ish, like the way I would describe a superhero movie to be.
Mm.
But if you are defining superhero genre as movies with a superhero who is from a comic book or any kind of thing that's called a superhero, then I think The Dark Knight probably is the best one for sure. And it's definitely in every conversation about best comic book movies.
Yeah.
Because it's the best. Yeah, I can see why people think of it as a classic. I wonder, like, if that movie would hold the same light if Batman didn't exist as a comic. Imagine a world where Batman wasn't a comic book character and that was a brand new movie.
Mm.
Would it be felt in the same way?
I don't know.
Because would people just think, what the heck is this Batman thing? Like, that's such a weird concept. I think that would be a really interesting alternate reality to be in, where Batman doesn't exist, but then they make a movie about him.
That'd be really interesting. Yeah, that'd be really interesting.
Because I like to look at that movie as just being a great film on its own. Sometimes people don't even consider that movie can. I don't know how to describe it. Do you know what I'm saying? About it being like based on a comic book, but doesn't feel like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't feel like that. Like it feels like it's its own movie.
Yeah. Yeah, different.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing of like it changing. I don't know. Of sort of why I said like changing the genre in the sense that it,
Right.
or just the.
Or change the idea of what a comic book movie could be.
Yeah.
Change like the potential.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that's my argument as to why it's a classic and why it's a great film.
You could also argue V for Vendetta did that, because I think that came out beforehand. But most people don't realize it's based on a comic.
Yeah.
Because it's not like a classic superhero that everyone knows.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I like searched up classic films.
Yeah.
Right. And the stuff that came up was like all like super old.
Yeah,
films.
exactly.
So like Citizen Kane.
Yeah.
Gone with the Wind, Casablanca, The Third Man, The Wizard of Oz.
You got to think half of these days would, like, if you got to think about them now in consideration with every other movie we now have, if you're naming the best movies of all time, are those quote-unquote classics even going to be on your list? In which case, if they're not, would you still consider them classics? Because some of those
That's a good point.
I probably wouldn't.
Mm.
So,
yeah, that's a really good point.
Or do you have to, or can you only compare it to like its own time period? And can you only like say, well, we didn't have all this technology and techniques back in the day, so we have to consider that this was the best of its time.
I think that that does play into it.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's even more weight to a film being quote unquote great if it's like the older it is, and if it's still
true.
If it still measures up, you know what I mean? You still watch it.
Oh, yeah.
Casablanca being a really good
Yeah,
example
yeah,
of that,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Casablanca is fantastic, and it's
Yeah,
you're not watching it and being like, oh, this doesn't hold up.
exactly, yeah. That's one of those great examples. But then Wizard of Oz, which I guess I haven't seen in a while,
Yeah.
but I feel like that's not that good. Am I wrong? It's been a while. I haven't seen it since I was a kid, I guess. But like,
yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of musicals, so
Right.
like, yeah, that definitely plays into it for me is the fact that it's a musical. But I definitely think production design wise, I don't know. It's one of those films that like, even when I hadn't seen it, it felt like I'd seen it because the story is just so iconic.
Right.
So I think that brings up another thing is how closely intertwined is something being iconic with something being classic or great. Is there overlap? Can something just be iconic but not be classic or like great? I don't know.
I don't think my brain's working well enough to determine the difference.
Yeah.
Iconic is more like symbol-wise, like it represents something if it's iconic. Like Casablanca represents, or Citizen Kane's probably better, represents like the age of like old cinema,
Yeah.
whereas The Avengers represents the current age of comic book movies, and that's iconic for comic book movies.
Yeah.
Iconic is more like I'd say there's even less things that I would call iconic because they have to represent an entire like thing, like category or something.
Yeah, I guess it's more like something iconic would be something that like entirely represents like a decade or something, you know what I mean? So like stuff that would come to mind would be like the 90s is like grunge rock, like Nirvana's iconic.
Yeah.
The 70s disco was like ABBA.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
the
Okay. Yeah.
icons.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. The icons, the people who
Sort
you
of the
think,
stuff
the
you
people that you think
associate-
about.
you
Yeah.
associate with whatever decade or whatever genre or
Yeah.
whatever.
Like. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think great is like you're saying, maybe greatness is basically what you think about, like what sort of holds up X amount of years down the line, or will hold up X amount of years down the line and continue to do so.
Yeah.
I think we've defined greatness today.
Classic or greatness?
Both.
Both. I feel like
Defined both.
greatness is way more vague and easier to describe than classic, because
Yeah.
classic has the whole time thing. Great. Something can be great without,
something
without
can
being
be
a
great
classic.
immediately. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, so I think yeah, greatness doesn't have time. Greatness is just like how good it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Greatness is a scale of greatness is like at the end of the scale of the goodness of something.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the word I'm looking for, but it's gonna have to do.
Yeah.
And then classic is basically time becomes involved, and then iconic is what you. And then iconic is association.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what we've done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
There we go.
That was our summary on some words that have already been defined in the dictionary, but we decided we were going to make up new definitions ourselves.
You know what's the funny thing about definitions and stuff, right?
What?
Is there's like actual dictionary writers, and they consult
Mm-hmm.
on what a word means. That's a job.
That's a weird thing to think about.
That's a job, Ben.
If I think about that for too much, I will explode.
Yeah.
So I think it's time to
We'll move on.
to move on
Alright.
to our next segment of the show, which is called
What you doing?
which is, of course, where we talk about what we've been doing and reading and watching and what we want to do. And I've been doing, I've been rewatching season 1 of The Good Place.
Have
Have you watched the show?
I've yet to watch it.
Mate,
It's another one to add to the list. My list is
obviously
so
I can't say
long.
too much, but The Good Place, especially in season 1, is such a new experience when you watch it the
When you
second
rewatch
time,
it, yeah.
which I didn't realize how good it was going to be the second time. I was more like curious than like anything, and then I was just like blown away at how much I enjoyed it again. And if you've seen the show, I think you know what I might mean by that, and I would really encourage you to watch season 1 again, because I think we're in the hiatus at the moment. There's no more new episodes, and I want more episodes because it's such a good show. And then in terms of movies that I've been watching, this is one I said a long time ago on the podcast I was going to watch, Coldplay: A Head Full of Dreams, which is like a documentary they put out last year, which essentially is a collection of them. I didn't talk about this on the last podcast, did I?
I don't think
I
so.
definitely didn't. No, I watched it the day after. Yeah. I just thought because we were with Michael and he might have had an opinion on it. I missed it by that much. Anyway, this documentary is weird for me. Like, it's interesting, but I wrote my review on Letterboxd. Basically, I wrote that it's an impressive archive of footage that helps me appreciate the band a little more. But simultaneously, it reminds me how much I would hate to hear them live, because every like 5 or 10 minutes, it cuts back to them at a modern concert of them jamming out to some annoying Coldplay pop song that sounds 100 times more annoying when it's live, because I
Right.
just hate the sound of Coldplay live, even though I love a lot of their music, or enjoy a lot of their music. Weirdly, it basically goes through every album that they recorded and shows the
Okay.
process on those, which is real cool. Except it basically completely and entirely skips over Milo Xyloto, which I don't know why. It just like didn't, like, it wasn't even like basically brought up, which I thought was real strange. I just thought it was something I was point out. But yeah, like, If you like Coldplay, definitely watch this. It's cool. It's informative, and it doesn't really need to be more than that. I just wish they just like not just blasted me with their. I'm sure they enjoy it, and maybe they're proud of it, so they want to show off their live shows because visually and everything they're really cool. And I'm sure it would be a really cool experience if it weren't for the music that was being played and the audio mix, basically, and the sound mix, and then the fact that I just don't think Chris sounds good singing live. That's just my opinion. And then for Easter, I think on Easter Friday it was, at some point, I went and saw Life of Brian because they had a screening at Event, a special $20 screening where you get a free merch pack and and a big bicky. Not worth the $20 or the trip to the cinema because the sound was so bad because the film's just so badly mixed, and when they blast it in that theater, it was just too loud and just you couldn't hear half of the dialogue sometimes.
Shit. That's not good.
But aside from that, I also kind of only half enjoyed the movie as well. There's a lot of real funny stuff.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff that's just so dumb and stupid, and I hate it. And it felt like the movie was really quite separated. I guess going into the movie, I was expecting it to be, because I read online, the Wikipedia summary is like, it's about this guy called Brian who keeps getting confused for Jesus, but that basically doesn't happen until like the last 20 minutes of the film, where it all just really suddenly just happens and they keep calling him the Messiah, and like, it wasn't what I was expecting, I guess, and it felt like it was a cool Life of Brian, and they just really suddenly just went out into this completely different story, almost.
Right.
Yeah, which, I mean, and then there was also this, have you seen the movie?
Yeah.
There's this one really, really absurd scene involving Brian jumping off a building and then no longer being on that building, and then after that sequence is over, he's on the floor, and it's like, what was the point in that sequence? It was so dumb. It was so dumb, and I just didn't understand. Maybe Monty Python fans would appreciate them, or maybe is it because I haven't seen any other movies?
Right.
Maybe that's the thing. I don't know. I'm going to stop talking about this movie because there's just nothing more to say. Go read my Letterboxd review. It's a lot more in-depth and more well-worded than what I'm saying now. Letterboxd.com/therealclose. And then real quickly, I also went to see Missing Link, which is the new film from, is it Leica Animation? Something like that. They're the guys who do Kubo and Coraline. Did they do Coraline? I can't remember now. They've done some movies. And it was good. It was real nice, but it wasn't like anything special.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then I watched Upgrade. This was a real good movie.
I still need to see it.
It's like a sci-fi dystopian, almost superhero-esque, but not like superhero, but like comic booky. It feels a bit comic booky, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. So that was real good. I highly recommend. And of course, I've seen Avengers Endgame, which you should read my review for because it's too long to read on here. I assume you haven't seen it.
No, I've
Matt,
yet to see it. I've been
you
busy
will
working.
hate this movie. If you didn't even like Infinity War, you will hate this movie because this is literally the movie that is made for the Marvel fans, and they do not care if you have not seen them or haven't been following them. They're like, screw you. We don't want to appeal. We don't even want to try to appeal to the audience that hasn't watched these movies.
Oh yeah,
because it's not worth it. But I do want you to watch it because I want to talk spoilers in our next podcast probably.
yeah.
So if you haven't watched it, then that's your own fault. Yeah. Obviously, there's not much I can say about this. Most people by now listening to this will have seen it if they want to see it, but I still won't talk about it probably until the next podcast. Super good. Super, super good. And I wasn't hugely disappointed by it. There was basically one major thing in the movie that I was disappointed by, but for the most part, I thought they did a really great job, and like I wasn't disappointed in what we got. You know, like it was a lot, and it was 3 hours long, so like the things I wanted to add in would only extend that runtime. You know, so it's understandable what happened. I wish we could get an extended cut that's like 3.5 or 4 hours long. Like, you know, because like this movie feels a lot like Return of the King. It's like the Return of the King of the Marvel universe. You know, it's like this big epic, you know, ending, you know, kind of thing, which is, it's cool. It's really awesome. But yeah, a lot of people have like immediately said that this is their favorite Marvel movie, and I think that that's just a massive hype train because it's such a hype movie. I just think as a film for me, it's not quite up there. It's up there, but it's not quite up there. Mm-hmm. But it's still really fantastic, and you won't be disappointed when you see it, except you, because well, you won't be disappointed because you have no expectations. So There you go. No one will be disappointed.
I'll be going in with lower expectations than I was going with Infinity
and then
War,
you might enjoy it more,
which might actually help me.
Maybe.
Because I mentioned before that, the difference between expectation and reality, the gap in between is disappointment. That's such a good quote.
Did you come up with that quote, or did you read that somewhere?
No, I came up with it.
You came up with that. This
smart.
doesn't make...
This is why I'm a writer, Ben, because I sometimes come up with good stuff.
Nice. Good.
Sometimes.
It's good to acknowledge that can happen.
Yeah, it can happen. So speaking of good stuff...
Oh, I got a couple.
Oh, you've got more things. Sorry.
Because it's just a couple of things I'm going to watch.
You're going to watch. My bad.
I forgot to watch the second part of Leaving Neverland, so I'll probably do that. And then there's also this movie called Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl that I saw for rental on iTunes. It was like, that one looks cool. I've heard about this movie from an acquaintance of mine who said that it was a favorite of theirs from an editing perspective. So I'm really interested to watch that and see if I agree. That's it.
Interesting. Cool. So, what I've been up to, I actually have been very slack in terms of watching stuff. I haven't watched anything of note, but I have been doing stuff. And those two things that I did was I went and saw the stand-up comedian Danny Boy, who is a good, one of the first stand-up comedians that I got into. He's a really funny lad. He's half Scottish, half Indian. And and
that's
so
a funny combo.
Yeah, exactly.
Almost like he's born for it.
Yeah, one of his he has this bit which he said he's like, this doesn't go down well in America. Being half Scottish, half Indian. That's two very different characters on The Simpsons to them, which I thought was funny.
All right.
But Ben doesn't like stand up, so
most stand up it just isn't funny to me.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It's just it feels fake.
Are you more? So for you, are jokes better in comedy films? Do they hit more?
Yeah.
Because I think for me it's the opposite. Stand up hits more than comedy movies.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So I went and saw Danny Boy. That's the third time I've seen him.
Mm-hmm.
I was interesting because his show is very much different than his other shows. It was more topical and stuff. So he was talking about Brexit. He was talking about Trump, which was interesting to see because that's not really his style. So he's doing something a little bit different, which was interesting. It was also interesting to see that my sense of humor sort of moved away from him. You know what I mean? That's not to say he was bad or you know what I mean? I know it's interesting. It's sort of seeing that my sense of humor has changed as I've gotten older.
Yeah, it's like growing up and realize you don't like the Tigger movie anymore.
Yeah. And then the other thing I got up to was I went on a zipline tour, which is the third time I've been ziplining.
Where would you do that?
Over in Waiheke.
Waiheke, yeah. Okay, interesting.
So I went ziplining, which is a good time. Yeah, ziplining's fun. Have you been ziplining?
I have.
Yeah?
I did it in Queenstown.
Did you enjoy it?
I did enjoy it, but I will tell you what I enjoyed more.
Yeah.
That's the Adrenaline Forest in Christchurch, which is more than just ziplining. It's mostly not there's ziplining in it, but it's mostly physical things that you have to do or things you have to walk on and stuff. It's more fun and engaging.
Yeah,
I find because it's like a course and it's some things you just real hard things to do.
Yeah,
that's real fun. But it also freaks me out because if it's even slightly windy, the trees sway and you're just oh yeah, freaks me out so much. But that's a real fun thing to do in Christchurch. About the only thing I can say that you can do in Christchurch that I can think of, which is more than I can say you can do in Auckland, because I don't know what you can do in Auckland.
Yeah, we have a similar thing in I don't know if it's still around, but there was very similar to that.
Right.
It was called Tree Adventures.
Okay.
And it was basically the same thing. It was obstacle courses and that
Yeah.
up in the treetops. And some of it was zip lines,
Yeah.
flying foxes or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was the thing.
Does the one in Waiheke let you go upside down?
I don't know if you could, because I didn't go upside down because I didn't
Right.
see any of the instructors go upside down.
Yeah, okay. The one in Queenstown, they show you how to go upside down.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I went upside down on a zip line. RedLaughRiot, that was the one.
Oh,
was
yeah,
it somewhere else? I've gone upside down on a zip line at some point.
Right.
I know that much. I was like, I'm gonna go upside down, and then I did it.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then everyone was like, hey. So that's what I've been up to. What I want to do. I'm gonna see Avengers Endgame at some point.
Do it.
In the week. That's my plan.
In the week?
Yeah.
Do it.
In the week that's come. Yeah, that's Yeah, in the week, right?
That's
yeah.
smart.
Mainly
do that.
because it's again, it's a film that you sort of, okay, so like we were talking about like iconic stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like it's not out of the question, even though it's like very early, but I think because the MCU's been going for ages, right?
Mm-hmm.
That the MCU is very much just iconic in terms of pop culture,
Right.
especially now.
Sure, yeah.
And I will admit that even as someone who's not a big fan of
Yeah.
the MCU. But yeah, so I'll definitely see it. And then I have a bunch of other films I want to see. Here's the thing, right? There's so many of them that I don't know which ones to watch and when.
Right.
So I'll watch some of the ones on my list. You can check those out on my Letterboxd, which is Matt_5. There's my plug.
I actually forgot to mention I'm gonna go see Shazam at some point. It might not it might not be this week, but I do plan to see that.
Yeah.
Hopefully this week actually, just because I wanted to wait until after Endgame to see it because I didn't want to see an Endgame trailer during Shazam.
Smart.
And that's the other thing. I went back after the movie and watched the Endgame trailers. They're actually because I'd seen the first one, the second trailer and the like final trailer or whatever.
Yeah.
They're actually both quite good. But the big game teaser, the one they play at Super Bowl, I'm so glad I didn't see that. Because that one actually did have, for me, quite a big reveal that I didn't want to know, and that I was real happily surprised by when I saw the film. So don't watch those. Don't watch the big game spot, but the other trailers are quite good, and I would have been happy to have seen in the theater beforehand. It's great. Go see it twice, 4 times. Do it. I'm also gonna go see that again at some point, probably at the end of May or something. Nice. Like I did last year. Yeah.
So now it's time for our next segment. Our last segment, I should say. And that's Crunchy Comments.
That was real bad.
It is the segment where we read out any comments that are when they are given.
Yeah.
Either on the live stream on Twitch or any of our social medias, which includes Facebook, Instagram. What else are we on?
Twitter.
Ambit, Twitter, on our YouTube, all that fun stuff. You should go check us out on all those platforms.
Or just choose one because it's more convenient for you.
Yeah. Up to you guys.
We're also on Spotify as well.
Yeah, we also recently joined Spotify.
Yeah.
Have we got any comments to read out?
Yeah, we got a few. Yeah, we got a few this week.
We got a few.
So,
take it away.
Ignacio Delgado, I hope I'm saying your name correctly, said on our Wikipedia challenge video, "What?" To which I believe I said something like, "Yeah, that pretty much sums it up." Because if you haven't seen that video,
boy, is it a good time.
They've summed it up very well. And that it's a doozy. Why don't you go watch it?
You should go watch it.
You'll find out why they've said that.
Yeah.
And then on our Onion on Onion video with Sebastian, the Whipping Post said, "Fun video celebrating our wacky world," which I agree with. Our world's pretty whack.
Yeah.
Like the headlines that come up, like, are just the funniest things. So yeah, thank you for that comment as well. And then Happy Friday ! Explanation mark.
I got what you mean.
Said on our best bits from the last podcast, "I could get on board with a bus stop that faces towards the bus." Boom! I've got one guy or girl who agrees with me, and that's all I need. 2 of us, we can hashtag make the change or whatever. So that
Can we please get the hashtag?
Hashtag make the change. That's way too vague.
No. Hashtag sideways bus shelters.
Not sideways. I never said sideways. I think we said diagonal last week.
Diagonal bus.
Yeah. So that you're facing towards it, but it's not like 90 degrees, you know. Thank you guys for your comments. It's awesome to hear.
And that's
and thank you for agreeing with me because I knew I couldn't be the only one facing that problem. I just knew.
This segment only works if people comment. So
thank you.
So thank you
for commenting. And an extra special thank you to Morgan Bridge, our patron, the one and only at the moment. But you can join him in this lovely shout out segment. Or if you don't want us to say your name, you can just put an anonymous name, I think, on Patreon. So you can still get a semi shout out anyway. If you donate, at the moment, any amount will get you a shout out, because the maximum is whoever's paying the most, until somebody actually buys the, I think the $5 tier, which is the official shout out tier, I think. I can't remember, to be honest. I haven't looked at the tiers in a while, but you should go check them out yourself. and
Yep.
see what
And
you want.
any money that is pledged to us on Patreon is invested straight back into the company to buy better equipment. So therefore, we can make better content for you guys. So guess what? You benefit from it. We benefit, you benefit, and then you benefit from our benefit. We all benefit. It's a win-win.
Let's wrap this up.
Yes, that's all the stuff. Support us in any way
Yeah.
you can. We
Let's do it.
will see you guys next time. I've been Matt.
And I've been very tired.
Bye.